Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr. Thank you so much for choosing us as part of your day and taking time out of your day to watch the show. Coming up, Jed York, the Niners owner, has some massive financial decisions coming up. Will he make the financial commitments in order to keep this football team elite? We're going to dive into this because Tim Kawakami of The Athletic just put together a really good article. And I like how he phrased this right from the jump. This 49ers negotiating season, the spotlight is on Jed York. And this really sets the table and the foundation for what we're going to discuss on the program here today. Here's what Kawakami had to say. Considering the cost of what will get Aiyuk and McCaffrey on board for this upcoming season, the huge dollars the 49ers already have committed to Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Trent Williams, and George Kittle, and the looming prospect of a mega deal for Brock Purdy next offseason, will York make the vast financial commitment necessary to keep most of this core together for a few more years? Or will the 49ers go through more problematic negotiations and high-profile departures in order to keep the costs from spiraling, but possibly costing the team some victories and maybe another Super Bowl shot or two? And that's really what the Niners fans are curious about. Jed York, John Lynch, this front office, Parag, this organization, they have been aggressive in trying to fortify this roster, pay their premium players, keep the core together in order to chase Super Bowls. And what's happened over the last few years? 4 NFC Championship games over the last 5 years, including 2 Super Bowl appearances. But this is the predicament that the Niners are in. How long can this be sustainable? Because the roster is uber talented, but the team is getting older, it's getting pricier, and at what point could a roster and financial reset occur? And that's kind of what Tim Kawakami was exploring in his story in The Athletic. Coming up short in 2 Super Bowls makes the situation very hard for Jed York and this team because the 49ers have been right there. So at what point do you not want to pay players for past performance? Because San Francisco right now is clearly trying to milk this out. And they're trying to allow this peak era of Niners football last as long as possible to try to get that 6th Lombardi trophy. Now, when you take a look ahead at this Niners roster moving forward and some of the contracts that could take place and could be signed, Brandon Aiyuk is going to cost north of $24 million per year. That's the reality. Christian McCaffrey might also look for a new deal. And Brock Purdy, your quarterback, is set to cash in on a deal that could pay him $45 to $50 million per season if he performs in 2024 like he did in 2023. And that's with the Niners already paying a premium price tag to Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and you could probably throw some other players in there like Charvarius Ward and Javon Hargrave. But going back to that previous point that I mentioned very briefly, give the Niners and York credit because they have been aggressive in spending, in their roster building strategy, in trying to remain competitive. And you don't have this roster and you don't have a highly paid coach and general manager like Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch if you think that you're going to be a bad team or you're content with just being average. They're approaching this in a way where aggressive businesses win both in corporate America, but also in the NFL. But when you commit top dollar to a quarterback like the Niners are set to do with Brock Purdy, that's when things change. That's when the salary cap tightens. And the reality is you might have to be financially savvy elsewhere. You might have to pull off some salary cap gymnastics. You might have to get creative with how you sign some of these contracts and the language in those deals. You also might have to make emotional decisions. Shoot, the Niners just had to do that with Arik Armstead this offseason. Looking ahead, some tough emotional and roster decisions could be awaiting this organization, which brings us to Christian McCaffrey. Here's what Tim Kawakami had to say about CMC. If McCaffrey just plays out this current contract, it's a lot of money, yes, But next offseason, McCaffrey could be in the same place Armstead was in March when the 49ers told him to take a huge pay cut or he'd be cut. Armstead refused. He was cut, signed a new deal with Jacksonville. And what if McCaffrey gets hurt this year? What if, for whatever reason, his performance dips? He will never have the bargaining power he has right now, which is why here on this show, I've been advocating for Christian McCaffrey to ask for more guaranteed money, and we've been talking about McCaffrey not attending OTAs and why that's an issue. Because McCaffrey deserves that. He knows the reality of being a 27-year-old running back, and from the Niners' standpoint, they're in a difficult spot. They love McCaffrey. He doesn't want to come out of games. He's been highly productive since that trade. He's so integral to what San Francisco does offensively under Shanahan. At the same time, you look at a lot of the running backs that Kyle Shanahan has coached. A lot of them have been productive. And in this next era of Niners football, are you going to be willing to pay your running back premium top dollar when you're going to have to pay your quarterback top dollar? Last 2 years for CMC certainly has a case to be made. In 2023, this past year, Offensive Player of the Year, top 5 in MVP voting. Extremely rare to have a running back nearly win MVP in this era of football. 272 carries, 1,500 yards nearly on the ground, 5.4 yards per tote, 14 rushing touchdowns, and then he added 67 catches for 564 yards. And the year before that, he's also been durable the last couple of years, which is great for him. 244 carries, 1,100 yards, 4.7 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns, 85 catches for 741 yards. So the Niners here in a little bit of a pickle with their running back. Running backs don't often age well. Christian McCaffrey is kind of a different animal because of that pass-catching ability. But again, this is the spot that the Niners are in where they're going to have to cut costs at some point. And how aggressive is Jed York willing to continue to be? Let's ask you this. I want to see where the fan base is at, where our viewers are at. Should the Niners extend Christian McCaffrey? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Our show today is sponsored by Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy, and you can get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chances of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Our future selections here, speaking of Christian McCaffrey, more than 1,150.5 rushing yards this year. We like the more there. Michael Pittman, more than 1,050.5 receiving yards, and then Derrick Henry, more than 10.5 rushing touchdowns. Win big money, withdraw your winnings, pick more, pick less, pick Prize Picks here today. prizepicks.com/CLNS. We continue this conversation here about where the Niners are at and what Jed York might have to do or what he might not do as far as his financial commitments for this team and this roster. The good news here, and I don't want anybody to panic, is that the Niners, they are a cash cow. And if they continue to win games, that allows them to continue to make money, and then that allows them in turn to be able to continue to spend money. And when you have a global brand, a nationwide brand, and an avid fan following, that helps the bottom line because the Niners raking in cash. Kawakami with some more great insight here. Forbes' most recent valuation of the Niners at $6 billion. That ranked 9th in the NFL with an annual profit of $152 million. These are all estimates, and I always hear complaints from all sides about how the numbers are put together, but under no circumstances are the Niners anything less than massive revenue and profit generators. Just for context, which is the best way to view these estimates, Forbes valued the Niners at $3.8 billion in 2020. That's a 63.3% jump in just 4 years. So business is booming. That is the translation for the Niners here. And the NFL continues to be an absolute cash cow as well, which helps out all organizations. But when you are running a business, you still have to manage profits. And you take a look ahead at the Niners' marquee 2025 free agents, it's safe to say that with the increasing price of this Niners team, a good chunk of these players might not be back for 2025. Charvarius Ward, he's going to demand top dollar. He was just the second-team All-Pro, but he's also getting a little bit older. Malik Collins on an expiring deal. Dre Greenlaw on an expiring deal. Juwan Jennings on Wednesday signed a contract extension, so you could take him off this list. Brandon Aiyuk hasn't yet signed a contract extension. Aaron Banks, Diamador Lenore, Talanoa Hufanga, John Feliciano, and Elijah Mitchell. And you look at how many starters are on that list. Charvarius Ward, Collins, Greenlaw, Jennings, Aiyuk, Banks, Lenore, Hufanga, Feliciano. That's a lot of games played and a lot of experience that could be walking out of the door so that San Francisco can afford to continue to pay some of their top players on this roster, which is going back to the point that some difficult emotional and roster decisions might have to be made. And that's without a Purdy extension being inevitable, because technically he is not going to be and is not a 2025 free agent. On the Niners' cash commitment here, according to Spotrac's updated figures, the 49ers already have $305 million in cash commitment, base salaries plus bonuses paid out for this season. That's the fourth most in the league, behind only Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Detroit. And those other teams already have large quarterback commitments. The 49ers have all this money tied up, and they still have the Purdy deal to do next offseason, and they already have the fifth most cash committed, $217.5 million for the 2025 season. And this is why here on the 49ers Report, we've been talking about some of these tough decisions looming. That's a lot of money already tied up into 2025. And that's why there's so much pressure on this team to get the job done. Because when you win the Super Bowl, it's a lot easier to make some roster cuts. When you don't, you go back to what we discussed a few moments ago of trying to milk it out because you still believe that you can win that title, and you're so close. So stay tuned. Things certainly going to be interesting for this organization, for this team, for this roster, and these players moving forward. I leave you with this. Will the Niners win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? W for win, L for lose. I say they do. That is my prediction.